Starting with newspapers, what we saw was high cost as an initial requirement for making information, knowledge, and culture, which led to a stark bifurcation between producers who had to be able to raise financial capital just like any other industrial organization, and passive consumers that could choose from a certain set of things that this industrial model could produce. Those who were producing had to have a way of raising money to pay those $2.5 million and later more for the telegraph and the radio transmitter and the television and eventually the mainframe. And that meant they were market-based or they were government-owned, depending on what kind of system they were in. And this characterized and anchored the way information and knowledge were produced for the next 150 years. Now, let me tell you a different story. Around June 2002, the world of supercomputers had a bombshell. The Japanese had for the first time created the fastest supercomputer, the NEC Earth simulator, taking the primary from the US. And about 2 years later, this, by the way, is measuring the trillion floating point operations per second that the computer is capable of running. Sigh of relief, IBM Gene Blue has just edged ahead of the NEC Earth simulator. All of this completely ignores the fact that throughout this period, there's another supercomputer running in the world, SETI at home, 4.5 million users around the world, contributing their leftover computer cycles whenever their computer isn't working by running a screensaver, and together sharing their resources to create a massive supercomputer that NASA harnesses to analyze the data coming from radio telescopes. What this picture suggests to us is that we've got a radical change in the way information production and exchange is capitalized. Not that it's become less capital intensive, that there's less money that's required, but that the ownership of this capital, the way the capitalization happens, is radically distributed. What this means is that for the first time since the Industrial Revolution, the most important means, the most important components of the core economic activities, remember we are in an information economy, of the most advanced economies, and there more than anywhere else, are in the hands of the population at large. This is completely different than what we've seen since the Industrial Revolution. So the story that most people know is the story of free or open source software. This is market share of Apache web server, one of the critical applications in web-based communications. In 1995, two groups of people said, wow, this is really important, the web. We need a much better web server. One was a motley collection of volunteers who just decided, you know, we really need this, we should write one, and what are we going to do with what well, we're going to share it and other people will be able to develop it. The other was Microsoft. Now, if I told you that 10 years later, the motley crew of people who didn't control anything that they produced acquired 20% of the market and was the red line, it would be amazing. Right? Think of it in minivans. A group of automobile engineers on their weekends are competing with Toyota. Right? But in fact, of course, the story is it's the 70%, including the major e-commerce site. 70% of a critical application on which web-based communications and applications work is produced in this form in direct competition with Microsoft, not in a side issue, in a central strategic decision to try to capture a component of the net. If in 1999 I told you, let's build a data storage and retrieval system. It's got to store terabytes. It's got to be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Got to be available from anywhere in the world. It has to support over 100 million users at any given moment. It's got to be robust to attack, including closing the main index, injecting malicious files, armed seizure of some major nodes. So that would take years. It would take millions. But of course, what I'm describing is P2P file sharing. Right? We always think of it as just stealing music, but fundamentally, it's a distributed data storage and retrieval system where people, for very obvious reasons, are willing to share their bandwidth and their storage to create something. So essentially what we're seeing is the emergence of a fourth transactional framework. It used to be that there were two primary dimensions along which you could divide things. They could be market-based or non-market-based. They could be decentralized or centralized. The price system was a market-based and decentralized system. If things worked better because you actually had somebody organizing them, you had firms if you wanted to be in the market, or you had governments or sometimes larger nonprofits in the non-market. It was too expensive to have decentralized social production, to have decentralized action in society that was not about society itself, that was in fact economic. But what we're seeing now is the emergence of this fourth system of social sharing and exchange. Not that it's the first time that we do nice things to each other or for each other as social beings. We do it all the time. It's that it's the first time that it's having major economic impact. So, a new social phenomenon is emerging. It's creating, and it's most visible when we see it, as a new form of competition. Peer-to-peer networks assaulting the recording industry. Free and open source software taking market share from Microsoft. Skype potentially threatening traditional telecoms. Wikipedia competing with online encyclopedias, but it's also a new source of opportunities for businesses. As you see a new set of social relations and behaviors emerging, you have new opportunities. So, social production is a real fact, not a fad. It is the critical long-term shift caused by the internet. Social relations and exchange become significantly more important than they ever were as an economic phenomenon. In some contexts, it's even more efficient because of the quality of the information, the ability to find the best person, the lower transaction costs. It's sustainable and growing fast, but, and this is the dark lining, it is threatened by, in the same way that it threatens, the incumbent industrial systems. So next time you open the paper and you see an intellectual property decision, a telecoms decision, it's not about something small and technical. It is about the future of the freedom to be as social beings with each other and the way information, knowledge, and culture will be produced. Because it is in this context that we see a battle over how easy or hard it will be for the industrial information economy to simply go on as it goes, or for the new model of production to begin to develop alongside that industrial model and change the way we begin to see the world and report what it is that we see. Thank you.